So when I first began thinking of how to design a character for Easter, the first thing my mind immediately went to was what species it should be. And luckily for Easter, that's a pretty easy decision because there's really only two options. Either it's rabbit or chicken. And so because I couldn't decide which one to go with, I eventually just decided to do both, starting with the chicken first. And this is when the real tricky question of designing characters comes up, because it's like, what is this character's purpose? I don't like designing a character unless they really are meant to do something, like they have a job or a purpose. So that was the first thing I needed to figure out when designing this guy. And it seemed a bit tricky at first because, Easter doesn't really have any sort of job associated with it. However, after thinking about it for a bit, I realized that actually there's quite a few jobs that could work with Easter. Because when you think about it, what really is an Easter egg? Can you eat it? Is it chocolate? Is it like a normal egg? What is it made of? If these are the sorts of eggs there are, then what what materials are they made of and how do they get there? There's a lot of different questions you'd have about an Easter egg. I mean, heck, maybe it's even radioactive. You want to be careful. You want someone who could really study this sort of thing. And as it turns out, the title for someone who studies eggs is an oologist, which, I mean, they probably don't really study Easter eggs, but for an Easter context, this type of job would fit perfectly. Just someone who could dissect these eggs, figure out where they came from and if they're safe, if they will even hatch. I mean, they are eggs after all, so you'd kind of expect that they would hatch at some point, but that kind of brings up a lot of scary possibilities, so it's best not to think about that. The point is, an oologist chicken was the first character design I decided to go with. Also, while I was making this character, I also started thinking of, like, what should I do for the next character? So I started thinking of other possible ideas, because, you don't want two oologist characters. One oologist is more than enough for anyone to handle. So then I got thinking, like, what what could someone do with Easter eggs? And I started thinking, like, could you actually eat Easter eggs? It depends. Like, are they made of chocolate? Are they made of actual egg material? But if you could eat them and they are safe, what about an Easter chef character? Now, I decided to not go with that idea. I like having a lot of connections to things that make sense, and a chef didn't quite have enough going for it. But it was an interesting idea. Just some chef character that could make some giant omelet out of a bunch of different Easter eggs. I don't know, I might revisit that another year, but not this time. Oh, yeah, and there was another connection I also thought about for a possible character. So, you know how Easter is like in the spring, a lot of flowers associated with it? And you know how dyeing eggs is an Easter activity? Well, who's someone who's known for dyeing things and flowers? Hippies. So I was kind of thinking like some sort of bird character with tie dye feathers that dyes eggs and a lot of flowers on their design. I feel like there's something there, but again, I wasn't quite able to find enough connections to really make it work. And also, I thought of a character design that would fit even better than the other two I mentioned and just fits perfectly with Easter. You know how there's that whole egg hunting part of Easter? Well, I was thinking, like, could there be a character just designed around that aspect alone? And so then I got thinking, is there anyone who's like really good at finding stuff or hunting for things? That's when my mind kind of started going into like a hunter detective type of character design. Like a Sherlock Holmes of the forest. You know, someone who's good at tracking stuff down. Maybe they have like different gadgets and things. Like a detective in a way, but also mixed with like a ghost hunter, and also mixed with just like a normal, ordinary hunter who has like maybe a little bit of camouflage. Perhaps, wasn't quite sure. I was kind of experimenting a lot with this character to really find what I wanted. But in the end, I definitely went towards a hunter detective type of character. I also find it a little bit funny too, as well, that this is a hunter, but it's also a rabbit. Normally, you think of like an animal as being a hunter, you think of like a fox or a wolf. You don't think of a rabbit, but in this context, I think it works quite well. Also, if you're trying to find eggs, it makes sense you might have to like jump quite high or something. So that's why I also gave this character some like jump spring shoe things just to help him get around a bit. Even though they're already a rabbit, so maybe they don't really need that, but eh. For this character, I only really designed one gadget, which is like this egg detector thing with a whisk on the end of it, but you could probably make a lot of fun egg finding gear from kitchen appliances. Really, any tool you'd use on an egg could be used to make some sort of gear, I imagine. Like spoons, forks, knives, baking trays, like a muffin tray, even, just egg beater, blender. You could probably use these all in some sort of gadget. You could even use those egg cup holder things, whatever they're called, as like a trophy stand for eggs you've collected. I could imagine some obsessed egg collector with shelves filled with eggs displayed on golden cup holders. There's a lot of stuff you could also just do with the design of eggs themselves. Eggs have a very iconic design. They're white and round with bright yellow in the middle. There's a lot of things you can do with them, a lot of places you can put them, and still have it be recognizable as an egg. They're kind of like apples or oranges or things like that, Very iconic design. 10 out of 10 design for eggs. They're the edible canvases of nature and should be respected as such. I wonder if there's more creatures you could add to Easter. Like how in the beginning of coming up with these character designs, it was a choice between either a rabbit or a chicken, Those are the only two Easter animals, really. But I wonder if there's a way to add more in somehow. I mean, fish and reptiles also lay eggs. I can't think of any fish or reptile that is specifically focused on eggs or anything Easter related, but I wouldn't be surprised if there's some connection you could make. Maybe next year I'll make the Easter snake. I don't know. We'll see. For now, these are the two characters I came up with this year. One to study eggs, and the other to go out there and find them. But of course, these are just the egg hunters. What about the eggs themselves?